This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss, co-host of PBS's MotorWeek. He'll take your calls and comments now at 844-885-4677 or email him at radio@goss-garage.com. And now, Pat Goss.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Goss's Garage. I'm Pat Goss. If you'd like to talk about anything dealing with automobiles or things with engines, give me a call. Coming up in just a minute, we have a very special guest, our friend Lyndon Abel from All American Harley Davidson. So if you have Harley questions, anything at all, get on the line. The number's 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-4677. Now, here's a little tip for you. See, I get a lot of questions about selecting repair shops and avoiding crooks. Now, one person asked if getting an estimate before letting a shop work on their car is a good idea. Well, duh, of course it is. Or you could sign a blank check and hand it to the service writer when you drop the car off. But, and it's a big one, make sure the estimate is realistic, not just wishful thinking. Some shops give you a ridiculously low estimate to get you to leave your car. Then they rip a few things apart so it can't be driven, followed by, sorry, but you need stuff not on our original estimate and it's gonna cost blankety blank. It used to be called bait and switch, and no matter what you call it, it's alive and well in 2018. If you're a person who shops lowest bidder for everything, you might be a home run for a crook. By shopping nothing but lowest price, you'll probably find someone who will give you a really low bid that only covers the basics. But in the end, most jobs don't wind up being just the basics, and you pay more or a lot more than the original lowball estimate. So, before you say yes, make sure the estimate is real world and worst case, not just best case wishful thinking, or what you want to hear. And speaking of what you want to hear, well, that's exactly how some of you get scammed. You unconsciously tell the shop what you're expecting, and they parrot it back to you. You're as happy as a clam in mud, but just like that clam, your happiness could be short-lived. When you tell the shop what you want to hear, you'll probably get just that, rather than a correct diagnosis and repair. And another really great way to be taken is self-diagnosis. This is when you read something on the internet or get free advice from a friend or relative and persuade yourself their suggestion would fix your car's problem. But remember, the information is free and is usually worth exactly what you paid for it. You paid nothing and it's worth nothing. So, unless you know for sure, don't take your car in and ask for a specific repair based on a self-diagnosis. Because you asked for it, you got it. But it didn't fix the problem. Hear that sucking sound? That, my friend, is the sound of your hard-earned money being sucked down a rat hole. Your diagnosis, your loss, not the shop's. To avoid losing money, describe the problem and ask for an estimate to fix it, not a specific repair. Now, another scam is where the shop has old parts for demonstration. Most common is a dirty air filter from another car. That's shown to you, but unless you know exactly what your air filter looks like, you would never know if it's yours or not. And don't think you'll outsmart a scammer by asking for your old parts back. Actual crooks, and there are just a few of them, will already have authentic bad parts from another car to give you. Also, watch out for fake parts because counterfeits are very common these days. And, okay, so much for that. We will now go to Lyndon Abel from All American Harley Davidson.
A lot of doom and gloom there, Pat.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know, I think, you know, a lot of that stuff happens and people mean well. You know, one of the things that and I'm sure you do the same thing at your shops, you want to get the service advisors to not deflect or ignore, but dig far deeper than the self-diagnosis. When somebody comes in and says, I want you to replace my coil, or I want you to do this, you need, and I'll have service advisors say, well, that's what he asked for. Like, it may have been what he asked for, but it's not necessarily what he wanted. Our job is to dig a little deeper and say, hey, listen, I'm happy to replace the coil, but just curious, how come? Oh, well, it's misfiring, and my buddy told me it was the coil. Okay, so don't write that job up as replace the coil. Write that job as customer states vehicle is misfiring, and then ask some more questions, right? Well, does it happen when it's cold, when it's warm, or both? Does it happen at low RPMs, high RPMs? Both. Does it have, is there anything that I can do to replicate that symptom, or does it, in your mind, does it just happen at, crazy times? Because obviously, if we can get a step-by-step process where we can duplicate the customer's experience, what they're hearing, what they're feeling, then almost every time we can diagnose and repair the problem. If we are guessing as to what they might be experiencing, we're kind of guessing as far as what the diagnosis is and what the repair is. So, I think that's incumbent upon the shop as well as the customer, right? But it's our job, like in any communication, if we fail, it ultimately falls on us, not the customer.
Right.
Like, it's our job to dig a little deeper and communicate effectively with them. That's what we're supposed to be good at.
Well, I have a key word for my service advisors. Why?
Right. Yeah.
Why do you want this?
Yeah.
Why do you think you
Not
need
as a
it?
challenge, but as a, let's go
Right.
a little deeper. Happy to do that, but just curious. How come?
Yeah.
Why
Exactly.
are we doing this? And usually, because the customer means well, right? They're trying to save you time. They've got it in their head, and oftentimes, they might be looking to, well, I need a new ECM, and you know what they need? New spark plug wires, right? And they mean well. They're trying to save you time. They've processed all this information, and they've gotten themselves down a potential rat hole, meaning well, and then they're trying to communicate what they think they want to you. But it's our job to figure out what the problem is and go from there.
Yeah, and
good shops will do that.
Right. A lot of people don't realize that a major portion of what we do is communication.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. The service advisor's job is about 95% communication.
Yeah.
Making sure that they get effective communication from the customer, that that they are interviewing appropriately the customer, and that they are transferring that information onto the ticket and transfer in order to communicate it clearly to the technician, to the manager, keep a historical record, and then gather the information from the technician, get it on the ticket for historical record for the manager, and also to communicate it back to the customer. And it's, I remember years ago I heard, well, a service advisor is just a diplomat. No. That is a very integral component in any good service department. And, sometimes it's nice to talk to the technician also, but you never want to bypass that service advisor. That job is really critical, really important.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things I tell people, car owners and so on, is to try to get as much information about the problem as you can. When does it happen? What's the temperature? Is it raining?
If
Is
you
it
can
dry?
give me 5 steps that I do to replicate the problem, I can diagnose it and fix it.
Exactly.
Right? I hear a rattle. Okay. When?
Right.
What's happening? How can I hear the rattle? Do I just drive it around? Because if I got to drive it around for 3 hours, it's going to be kind of expensive for one of us, right? If I can take it out on a 5-minute test ride and replicate the problem, then I got about a 99% chance of identifying the problem, and with a proper diagnosis and repairing it.
Now, there's one question that I love, though, and I usually get about 5 of them a week, and that is, I'll get an email or a call or whatever. My car's making a noise. What's wrong with it?
Sounds like it's running. Yeah, well, there's a good example of, the new service advisor going, he told me to write down what say, customer states a car is making noise. Okay, well, that's where a good service advisor comes in and says, what kind of noise? Is it a chugga 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 noise or a noise? Or, and sometimes it's kind of funny, but you you got to interview the customer,
Right.
get that information out of them.
Yeah, and it isn't always easy. Service writers don't have an easy job.
No, it can be a very tough job.
Right.
In fact, it's the worst job in the world if you're at a disorganized shop. If you're at an organized shop and the manager is providing you clarity, it's a difficult job, but it's not one that makes you want to, kill yourself.
Right.
When you were talking about that stuff at the opening, the other thing that I was reminded of is the old axiom of there's always somebody who will do it cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
And this friend of mine sent me this. I think if you Google that, the first 20 things that come up are this picture of this guy laying on his stomach with a tattoo artist doing a tattoo on his back, and the guy's holding this really intricate picture of like a fire-breathing dragon with intricate details, and the tattoo artist is doing like a stick figure horse with wings on it. And, with the caption of, there's always someone who will do it cheaper. And you got to think, okay, is it really the cost that's the ultimate measure, or is it the value, right? And value starts with doing something properly, right? So if it's not done properly, you're paying too much for it, no matter how cheap it is.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
exactly.
I think that guy getting the tattoo would pay good money just to have that tattoo removed.
Yeah, probably so. Hey, folks. We need to take a break. We will be right back. More with Lyndon Abel from All American Harley Davidson coming up here on Goss's Garage.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Folks, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about a car dealer that's near and dear to my heart. It's Mercedes-Benz of Annapolis. I've bought over 20 cars from them, but above and beyond that, there is one very special salesman that I always deal with. His name is Wayne Discus, and I would highly suggest you contact him if you're looking for a new Mercedes or used car. He can handle local and national sales. Check out Mercedes-Benz of Annapolis at mercedesofannapolis.com and meet Wayne Discus. Hey, be sure to tell Wayne Pat Goss sent you. mercedesofannapolis.com. This news and views is from Auto Care Pro magazine and deals with automatic transmissions. Although their story relates to an Audi that refused to shift, it could apply to most cars. In this case, the tech did all the proper preliminary tests, including a visual inspection of related parts, which revealed a badly corroded transmission computer. Seems someone had replaced the cabin air filter and didn't properly install its cover. Now, this allowed water to leak onto the computer, and over time the water caused corrosion and no shift. A new module made the Audi shift like new. The tech also reinstalled the cabin air filter cover properly. There are two primary lessons here. First, just because the symptoms are horrific doesn't mean the cause is horrific. In fact, seemingly huge problems may be cheap to fix. Second, this is a case where you'll probably be taken if you didn't pick a good shop. That's because you've already convinced yourself you need a major repair, and when the shop confirms what you suspect, you just go for it. This shop could have easily sold a completely unnecessary transmission, but instead was honest and saved the owner thousands of dollars. So select your shop carefully. Rather than just cheap, look for ASE certification, skill, quality, and above all, honesty. Too often the cheapest estimates come from shops with overall lower skill sets, or in some cases something much worse, more greed and less honesty.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677.
All right, folks, please subscribe to Goss's Garage on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, and for more car tips, tricks, and money-saving ideas, visit goss-garage.com. All right, Lyndon Abel from All American Harley Davidson is here in the studio. But right now, we are going to talk to Srihar in India. Srihar, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Hello, sir. I have a doubt. I recently changed car tires There are two dots on the sidewall of tires, yellow dot and a red dot. Do they have any meaning? The dealership in India is saying that it is just for design purpose and doesn't have any meaning to it.
Okay. These are dots on the side of the tire?
Yeah, sidewall of the tire, a yellow dot and a red dot.
Okay, well, dots on the side of the tire are normally going to be for the purpose of balancing or mounting the tire. I think motorcycle tires are like that
They
too.
have. They recently changed, but two dots?
Well,
Yeah, there are two dots.
If it was a yellow dot, that's probably a balanced dot.
Well, we see yellow, we see blue, we see two on a tire. One is to mount it 180 degrees away from the valve stem, because the valve stem, especially on cars with tire pressure monitoring system, adds weight. So the heavy spot of the tire goes opposite the heavy spot of the wheel, which is the tire pressure monitoring sensor. And then the second one, I forget what the second one is for now, but the guys out in the shop use it all the time.
They recently changed. So it used to be for Harley tires, the balance dot would be lined up with the valve stem, because it was the lightest spot on the tire. And then, but recently,
Is it very critical, sir, this spot?
What's that?
Is it very critical to align the dot with the stem, valve stem? Because they are not aligned actually in my tires, but they have balanced.
Well, yeah, but that's where you start out.
Just
And
helps with balance, right?
If you have good mounting skills and equipment and so on, then they may wind up not being aligned because you do road force analysis and so on. But the bigger problem is that probably 90% of the folks who deal with tires on a regular basis either don't know what the dots mean or don't care, and they'll put them on in any which way. So we see them just scattered all around when a car comes in with new tires, but it has nothing to do with wear. The wear indicators are in between the grooves in the tread, and they're just lumps molded into the body of the tire, and that gives you when those start showing between two treads, then the tire is worn out.
Which is also a starting point. Might as well just measure the tread depth as long as you're there.
Yes, exactly.
Sir, how critical is it to align that dot with the stem valve? If they balance it, is it okay, or should I ask them again to remove the tires and match it with the stem valve?
You're breaking up on this, and
So he was asking if I heard that he wanted to know how critical it was that it lined up, and I think the answer is it's not necessarily critical. That if it's a balance dot, then that's where you would start out, following the proper procedure. And if you got too much weight required to finish the balancing, then a good shop would move the dot and try that again and see if you get a better result. So sometimes the balance dot not being lined up is actually a sign that somebody is pretty conscientious about how they're mounting it. And then, of course, if you have the really high-tech machines, you're getting into road force, and that's really the best way
so
to
it's
do
really
it.
not critical at all.
It's
that
hard
it
to
be
tell by
lined up.
looking at it.
Yeah, it's just a starting point for the technician that's mounting the tire.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care. Yes. So I guess it isn't just here in the good old U.S. of A. Questions from India, and we get calls. We've got a gentleman in Australia that calls quite frequently, and
What time is it over there?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Should have asked him.
Yeah. He may be calling us at 3 a.m. or something. Wow.
Well, up late, worried about his tires. Makes
Yes.
sense.
All right. George from Boston, Massachusetts. George, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Good morning, Pat. How are you? I must call to tell you I have sinned. I have bought an Alfa Romeo 4C.
Well, how did you sin?
Everyone, including you earlier when I spoke to you, sort of suggested perhaps this wasn't the best possible idea, but it might be fun. Well, now I've done it, and I'm actually pretty happy so far.
Good.
Yeah,
Well,
no, I think it's good.
Yeah, the thing of it is, back in the day, if you bought an Alpha, you probably also had some kind of a affinity for whips and chains or something like that. But, in today's world, there is enough computer power out there that just about anybody who can afford to buy the programs and so on could, number one, design an engine that would work and work well. So no matter whose name is on it, as long as they do the casting and everything right, chances are it's going to be great. So we don't see problems like we used to with design flaws and stuff like that. And that holds true with the electronics and so on, because what most of these exotic companies are doing, they're buying computer systems and so on from a manufacturer who specializes in that type of part, and then it's simply programmed to match the vehicle. So you might have the same source for the electronics and so on that, say, a General Motors car does or not. Not that it's the same part, but it might come from the same company, and it's just dialed in for your particular car. So the problems that we used to see with the smaller companies and the companies that did exotics and so on, where just everything was flawed. You couldn't keep oil in them, and the electronics were all goofed up and things like that. We don't see much of that anymore, unless it's some really, really small fledgling startup or something that's trying to do something on a shoestring, and they've got 3 cars they've built, and you wouldn't want one of those on a bet.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that I do feel good that it's backed by a much larger company now, Chrysler. So there's some little safety in that. It seems to have pretty good warranty. I got 4 years for everything to blow up, and after that, I'm on my own.
Yeah.
But I do have a specific question for you. So this car came with some great Pirelli P0 summer tires, and I've been admonished to keep it. Don't drive it if it's below 45. So I'm dutifully doing that. 45. But do I have any issues just leaving it parked in my garage? Because I understand that this compound turns into essentially just hard plastic. It's right now it's about 8-9 degrees in the Boston area.
Okay, well,
sitting in the garage.
Fact of the matter is, you can drive it. You just have to be careful when it's cold, because traction goes away on summer tires when they get super cold, usually something below 40, maybe 30 degrees. It starts at about 40 and gets worse the colder it gets. As far as the tires are concerned, they don't know, they don't care. So there's no issue with the tires as a general rule, unless you get over aggressive and lock the wheels up and start doing real crazy stuff. Then they'll go away in a hurry. But other than that, use a little common sense and don't expect it to stop or go around corners or anything at all like it does in the warmer weather.
Of course. And I think my plan for next year is I'm going to, over the summer, late summer, fall, I'm going to acquire the appropriate winter tires and rims like I've done with all my other cars in New England, and put them on, when the weather starts to get cold.
Yeah, that's the smart thing to do. And everybody thinks that winter tires are only for snow and things like that. Well, snow tires are obsolete for the most part. Winter tires are a whole different animal. They're designed with a different compound. The compound remains sticky at lower temperatures. You can go well below 0 with most of them and still have good traction. The tread is designed in such a manner that it grips ice where all season or summer tires don't, and things like that. So really,
absolutely, the effect is night and day, in my experience.
Right.
But good. You make me feel better, Pat. you've
Yeah,
cheered me
enjoy
up.
the car. I doubt you'll
will.
have any problems with it.
It's pretty awesome. Thanks. Great show. Have a great broadcast. I'll talk to you again.
Thank you. Take care, George.
Bye-bye.
All right, something you don't have to worry about.
Well, I mean, if George is worried about those tires under 45 degrees, he probably needs to put different tires on at night in June. He lives up in Boston, right?
Right.
I mean, that's a concern.
Well, you know, I'm originally from New York.
Yeah.
And in,
Buffalo, right?
Outside of Buffalo,
Okay.
yes, where we have winter,
Somewhat
July,
cooler, right.
and winter. It was horrible up there. Oh, Lord, I hate it. I saw something on the internet the other day where in that general area, there was over 300 cloudy days a year. And that was one of the
all
things
the cities along the Great Lakes, it's just like, I mean, October, it gets gray and it doesn't let up till about, April.
yeah, it's terrible. I mean, it's very depressing to me. So, oh well, so much for it. All right, we need to take another break. If you have a question for Lyndon Abel about a Harley Davidson, by all means, 844-885-4677. Give us a call. We'll be right back here on Goss's Garage.
Operators are standing by to take your call for Pat at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Think you'll pocket a lot more money if you sell rather than trade your car? Perhaps, but appearance sells cars, and your poor car is a bit grungy. There's dull paint, that ugly coffee stain on the seat, and a sweaty arm stain on the door, plus crumbs in every crack and crevice. Yep, when you look close, it's kind of ugly, and sadly for you, most used cars are bought on looks more than condition. That means a good cleanup job or pay a couple $100 to have it done. Next, because many used car buyers pull dipsticks and check fluids, you should clean the engine bay and change all the fluids. Buyers usually don't know what's good or bad, but someone on the internet says smart shoppers pull dipsticks, so buyers pull dipsticks, which often leads to questions about service and possible problems. Also, if the tires show any wear, buyers may assume there are worn front end parts. Don't forget the high cost of ads so people know it's for sale. And the questions. Is there a warranty? Will you take a trade? Is it inspected? Will you take a check? Can I give you $100 down and $100 a week? And so on. Now, a biggie. You might actually be risking your life, too. Where do you safely show a car so you don't have strangers eyeballing you and your home or trying to steal the car? When you look at the aggravation, work, expense, and dangers of selling a car, trading often looks really good. I get lots of air filter questions, and one of the most common deals with why air filters need to be replaced so often. Well, actually, they usually don't, yet many drivers wind up buying a new air filter at every oil change, which is utterly ridiculous. Drivers say techs tell them if they don't buy a new air filter, they'll waste a lot of gas. Maybe that statement comes from ignorance or maybe dishonesty, but either way, you lose. Decades ago, dirty air filters did waste gas, but today, not so much. Cars now use a sensor to measure the air coming through the air filter, and computers to mix exactly the right amount of gas to match that air. So even though a dirty air filter reduces airflow into the engine, it doesn't affect gas mileage because the computer is always precisely matching fuel to the incoming air. In other words, a dirty filter means less air, and less air means less gas, so there's never an imbalance between air and fuel. Certainly when a filter gets really, really dirty, it can cause performance problems, but even then it may not affect gas mileage. So how long do air filters last? Unless you drive in really dusty conditions, air filters usually last 30 to 60,000 miles. Overselling of air filters is an enormous problem, and the best way not to be taken is to learn how to check your own air filter and check it twice a year.
Now, back to Goss's Garage with your host, Pat Goss.
All right, folks, for those of you enjoying Goss's Garage on TuneIn.com, please note our new showtime every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. Lyndon Abel from All American Harley Davidson is here in the studio. If you have a question, 844-885-4677. Let's talk to Shepard from Ocala, Florida. Welcome to Goss's Garage.
Oh, good morning, Pat. I took your advice. Just briefly, my 2000 Chevrolet S10, a persistent hot weather 452 code. I did clean the contacts on the computer for the computer brain as you told me to. However, I will not know if I've really cured this code until the plus 95-degree weather comes back to Florida.
Well,
so we'll see what happens come summertime.
Okay, well, let's hope it helps.
Yeah, but the question I have for you today, Pat, since I'm retired from the job, you're still in the job, I do airport transportation, and right now I'm using a 13 Hyundai Sonata. She's got 96,000 miles on her, not a day's trouble, but I'm one of those crazy people that still changes oil every 3,000, transmission fluid every 15,000, drain and refill the cooling system every year, so hey, if I can get 250,000 miles out of this thing, I'll be happy. My question is, Pat, I keep up with not only the U.S. but also the world auto industry. And come this year, a company called GAC, Guangzhou Automotive Corporation out of China, is going to be hitting us hard and heavy with some of their new vehicles, new SUVs. They look completely modern. And I am leery about buying a vehicle, especially for an airport business, from a new vehicle from an established manufacturer, much less an upstart. And they would be an upstart in this country, but apparently they have quite a following around the world, especially Africa and the Middle East. Do you know anything about this new GAC company?
Not a whole lot, although I can tell you that a lot of the Chinese stuff is variants on domestic themes, because you look at like General Motors, the number one car in China is Buick, and
right.
The Chinese
and the Buick Envision
very good at cloning things.
Yeah, it's a polite word for stealing.
Right.
And yeah,
it's a nice word for stealing. And the Buick Envision and the Cadillac CTS Hybrid is built in China, but it's built in a General Motors facility, of course.
Right. But the thing I'm getting at is that a lot of their stuff is not new. It is something that is remade, re-engineered from something that's existing. But that said, on a company like this, unless I knew a lot more about them, I would not, under any circumstance, think about buying them until they have established themselves in the United States. And the reason for that is we talk about how these companies fare in other parts of the world, like you just mentioned Africa. Driving in Africa is nothing like driving in the United States. The United States
Correct.
has some of the harshest conditions for cars on the planet. So we drive them harder. We have horrible roads in a lot of the country. We're really bad about maintenance because other parts of the world people appreciate their cars. Here we want to see how little we can do to them, and then we expect them to last a lifetime. All such things as that.
Oh, brother, you're preaching to the choir. Like I said, I'm out of the business. I now sell auto parts and hand out repair advice, and 90% of the time people don't listen, yet they are amazed that my 99 Hyundai Accent is still going strong and looks good after 19 years. Okay.
There's also a support network issue, right? I mean,
Yeah.
parts availability, I mean, I obviously I'm a dealer, so I appreciate a great dealer network, and I think it's something that Harley brings to the table. But, where are you going to get your parts supply? Where are you going to get your,
Correct.
Technical expertise? Good OEs have, if the technician is stumped, they have a place you can go to say, okay, you guys see all the problems. What are they? And if you don't have that in, domestically, I wouldn't go there.
Yeah, well, one of the dealerships I was involved with, we took on, and we thought we were doing the right thing. We took on a Daewoo franchise, And
Right.
the cars were not that bad. But when
Right.
they sat on our lot under warranty and we're waiting 4, 5, 6 weeks for some little relay or something, some obscure part, and we couldn't get it, I mean, that whole deal soured in an instant.
Sure.
Well, I remember when Daihatsu came to the United States, I thought they were a fantastic car, but they didn't sell very well because it wasn't what Americans wanted. And next thing you know, we have hundreds of thousands of Americans left with orphan cars.
Yep.
So, all right. Thanks a lot, Pat. I'll see you later, and God bless. Bye-bye.
Okay, you take care. All right, Lyndon, I see you got some stuff for us here. What you got going on?
So we have, at All American Harley Davidson, we did a performance seminar, something that I've done, in the past. This is an updated one, and went pretty well. We brought a couple of the slides, and we're going to do this again. Also, coming up at the end of February, 23, 4, 5 of February, I believe, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, at the DC Convention Center is the International Motorcycle Show.
Right.
And they've asked me to do this seminar there. So Sunday from 12:30 to 2, I'm going to put this on. And I think we brought a couple of slides. I'm not sure if I can see what's on.
No, you won't be able to.
Okay, well, that's going to make for an awkward narration.
Right.
Okay, so I think we're looking at the first slide. So I just brought some of the slides, not everything, but just a quick overview of what we do in this seminar. So there's a picture of a cutaway motor, so we can show what the different components are of a motor: cases, cylinders, the heads, the rocker box covers, and sort of dispel some of the confusion, right? So people look at the rocker box covers and think they're the heads and so forth. So we just want to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Because anybody that's into Harleys knows all of these terms. And people
They've
like
heard
to throw
the
it
terms,
around.
but there's sometimes confusion on it. And,
Right.
And lots of people know exactly what you're talking about, but I just like to make sure that everybody in the audience is kind of speaking the same language. So can we go to the next one? Okay, so then we've got just a real fast overview of the 4 different cycles of a 4-cycle motor or a 4-stroke motor. So there's the intake, the compression, the power, and the exhaust, otherwise known as suck, squeeze, bang, blow, which I think gets the terminology across pretty clearly, right? Air comes in, air gets squeezed on the compression stroke, and so forth. And then this is a really big one, right? Torque and horsepower. I mean, in the Harley business, you used to always have people come in and say, I want to make 100 horsepower. And so one of our jobs is to make sure that they understand the difference between torque and horsepower. Frankly, making even an older Harley engine have 100 horsepower isn't that difficult, but the easiest way to make it is a way where they're going to be pretty unhappy with the motor. The rider's going to be unhappy with the motor because the low-end torque is terrible. And so we just explain what torque is, what horsepower is, and try to dispel that confusion. So again, we're all on the same page. And then, so this is obviously a Harley-centric class, and I think anybody that's into internal combustion motors can take something away from this, but we do go through specific Harley things and, what a stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4 are. And with the new Milwaukee 8s, Harley-Davidson has some very specific packages. With the older motors, of course, there are different definitions to those terms, but, we go through that because I think there's a lot of confusion there, and we want people to walk away with a clear understanding. So on the next slide, okay, so there's, this is just one of these, there's a few of them, but just an explanation of how you can create more power, right? Creating more power everywhere with displacement or compression, more air with the appropriate amount of fuel, can create more power. Again, very critical to have the appropriate amount of fuel. And then the different ways that you can get more air through your motor, whether that's intake, heads, throttle body, exhaust, and so forth. And then, of course, the cams, which probably provides the most confusion. The cams are really the personality of your motor, and it's a little bit complex, so we try to, again, explain that. And then we go over the basics of tuning, right? We're not going to drag them through all of that because it would take 3 days. But the basics of tuning for fuel injection. So the different devices that are out there and why some are better than others. And then most people have seen a dyno graph if they're interested in performance, but maybe they don't know what it means. So we go through that. And again, we're back to torque and horsepower, right? And we explain why that is, what it means, how to read it, what looks good, what maybe doesn't look so good, what's appropriate on a race motor, but not appropriate on a street. I'm sure in your years, you've got lots of people that say, oh, well, that's what the racers use, so that's what I'm going to use on the street.
Oh, Lord, yes.
And it's not necessarily appropriate, right? You might be making a motor that runs in a very narrow RPM band for a race motor, whereas on a street you typically want a broader RPM range where you have good performance, and generally you want more low-end torque, whereas on a race motor, you might be willing to give up all of your low-end torque to just have that peak power in a narrow range. So we try to make sure that people understand that. And then we'll also go over the Milwaukee 8 motor, because that's been really a revolution. It's not every 15 to 20 years Harley Davidson comes out with a new motor. So we talk about some of the highlights of this motor, which I've talked about here on your program. Anyway, if you're interested in more of that, we've got, you can check the All-American events calendar. We've got another one of those coming up, or come on down to International Motorcycle Show and join me on their, I think it's called the Gears and Grease Garage, something like that. They like the G's in the show title that you have, so I think they were emulating you, Pat. High praise.
Oh, Lord. All right, so how can they get in touch? What's your website?
Go to the website, allamericanharley.com, and check our event calendar. We're doing one of these in early March. We also have another seminar on the same topic, right, performance. We did a stage 4 motor build and videotaped the whole thing. This is like a 2-day job, so we chopped it up and through the magic of video editing managed to turn it into a slightly incomplete but watchable roughly 1 hour video, a little less than an hour, so that you can see all of that without having to pack a lunch and a dinner and a sleeping bag.
Gotcha.
But it's a cool, if you're interested in that sort of stuff, it's a really, cool to see the motor going back together and some detailed description of the new parts and a comparison to the old ones. And I think we're doing that on the 27th of February at All American Harley Davidson in Hughesville, Maryland.
Beautiful, downtown Hughesville. Hey, folks, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. More with Lyndon Abel from All American Harley Davidson coming up. 844-885-4677 is the number. Give us a call.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Folks, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about a car dealer that's near and dear to my heart. It's Mercedes-Benz of Annapolis. I've bought over 20 cars from them, but above and beyond that, there is one very special salesman that I always deal with. His name is Wayne Discus, and I would highly suggest you contact him if you're looking for a new Mercedes or used car. He can handle local and national sales. Check out Mercedes-Benz of Annapolis at mercedesofannapolis.com and meet Wayne Discus. Hey, be sure to tell Wayne Pat Goss sent you. mercedesofannapolis.com. Do you use the proper strategy when buying replacement parts for your car or truck? Hi, I'm Pat Goss for Goss's Garage, and I've noticed that many of you who buy auto parts make a huge mistake. You shop for one and only one thing: price. Now, naturally, price is important, but quality is more important. When you buy the cheapest part in town, you may sacrifice quality, and less quality often means shorter life and less reliability. In some cases, the cheapest part may even compromise vehicle safety. For the best value from the parts you buy, look for the lowest price, but only on high-quality parts. When you compare prices, be sure you're comparing parts that have the same specifications. And never buy a part with a lower rating than your car requires. What many drivers don't realize is cheap can be very costly in the end. Quality usually costs less per mile over the long haul. I'm Pat Goss for Goss's Garage.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. And now, Pat Goss.
Folks, please subscribe to Goss's Garage on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. And for more car tips, tricks, and money-saving ideas, visit goss-garage.com. Lyndon Abel, All-American Harley-Davidson, Hughesville, Maryland.
Yes, sir.
Down in God's country, as some folks say.
Beautiful southern Maryland.
Yes, and it is beautiful down
Very
there.
nice and short ride from Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm. All right, now, you were talking about torque and horsepower.
Yeah.
You know, we get people fixated for street use on horsepower.
Right, right.
And unless you're going to race it, the torque is what makes the vehicle or the bike or whatever it is feel strong, especially off the line.
Yeah, that's the force. And actually, I would argue that whether you're racing or not, it's all about torque. And it's simply torque. I mean, horsepower in the way it's calculated for cars and motorcycles is simply a calculation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's torque times RPM divided by 5,252.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a straight up calculation. So what's really relevant is torque at what RPM. If you want to run the vehicle between 2,000 and 4,000 RPMs, what do you care about what it produces at 7,000 RPMs? What you care about is the torque it's producing between 2 and 4. Now, if you say, well, I just want back to my example before, I just want a 100 horsepower motor or a 500 horsepower motor, whatever your calculation is. Well, if it's producing that power at an RPM range where you're not riding it, who cares? And so, you know, even on a race car, I would say, how much torque in the RPM range where we want to be traveling?
You know, like my bike, it's only an 88 cubic inch, that is, folks.
Right.
But it's been recammed and so on. And the low-end torque, if you're riding, normal riding, traffic and one thing and another, I mean, the power of that thing is amazing.
Yeah, you know, it's got a lot of, the classic Harley-Davidson tractor-like torque off the line.
Yeah, you can, because of all the torque, the way it's cammed and everything, you're not shifting all the time and so on. You can lug it down relatively low.
Yeah, and still pull away, smoothly.
Right, without stressing the engine or anything.
And you've got a motor that's producing, I don't know, let's say 70 pounds of torque at 1,500 RPMs. But you can, but its max horsepower is probably 70 horsepower, right? You can make 150 horsepower with a motor that's producing 30 pounds of torque. You're just doing it much higher in the RPM range, and if you don't like to spin the motor up to 10,000 RPMs, then that's not going to be a very satisfying ride.
Well, in cars, I've had 52 Corvettes over the years, and some of them.
52?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And I buy them. Some of them were set up for the track or something like that. Most miserable cars you would ever want to encounter trying to drive on a daily basis.
Yeah, because it's set up for a totally different experience.
Right.
The suspension's too harsh. The brakes don't work until they're red hot. The tires are probably don't give you great traction until they're smoking and all of that stuff. And then the RPM range is while it produces a tremendous amount of power, it ain't producing much off the line. It's producing it, where you drop the hammer up to 6,000 and then let the clutch loose, and that's
and
power.
you can't do that in traffic. So you're riding the clutch and you're
kind of a heavy
feathering
clutch
everything.
too, right?
Oh yeah, and all that stuff, and it just makes no sense. Give me a car. I used to take those cars and take the reworked small block out, and GM used to have a 400 cubic inch small block engine. Had gobs of torque. And you put one of those in and oh man, is this neat.
Right, because it produces torque over a nice broad, you end up with a torque curve that looks, I like to say, like an umbrella instead of like the Matterhorn.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Jim from Pennsylvania, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Well, good to be talking to you guys this morning. Pat, I saw on MotorWeek you did a segment where you showed a radiator and a cutaway of the actual transmission cooler that's in the radiator. All these little fine passages in there. Do you think that the BG transmission flush is able to go into that section and actually clean out any debris that's in there?
Yeah. I mean, in most cases,
great.
that would be a yes. Now, some of them have fins inside them that are so fine that nothing can clean them. But by and large, the normal crud and stuff that builds up in there, the BG transmission flush will clean them. And part of the reason is that the way the flush machine works, it's in one of the cooling lines. It's in series with the cooling line, so all of your fresh fluid and everything is essentially injected directly into that cooler and then back to the transmission.
I'm with you. I had that process done after the transmission had all the clutches repaired in it. But the people who did the repair on the transmission didn't follow it up with a flush. So about a month later, I come along and had the BG flush done in the hopes that any material that was in the system would be removed during the flush process.
Yeah, most all of the companies that we work with, we sell remanufactured transmissions, and most of them either give you a chemical kit that must be used or stipulate that you flush the transmission coolers somehow, or the warranty is void from day one. So
I'm with you. Well, this was done at a dealership, and it was a bench rebuild or just replacement of the clutches.
Oh boy.
So
okay.
Yeah. You go to the dealer and they're looking to. They got a transmission guy in the shop. They want to keep him busy rather than pay for a remanufactured one like you guys do in the independents. But I think we'll be good. So thank you so much.
Okay, take care. Ah, yes, cleaning things up. You're going to rebuild something that has fluid in it. You got to clean it.
Yeah, you do a motor build and you start with fresh oil.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you do that?
Now, like
clean things
on a
up.
Harley, the oil tank, if you've got an engine that has grenaded itself, you clean or replace the oil tank?
You used to be able to clean it. The new ones have a cover on top of them where you can certainly clean it, but you just can't verify that everything's out of it. The other thing that's squirrely are the oil lines, where if they're steel, they're pretty easy to clean out, but if they're rubber, it's a little dicey. Shrapnel can get hooked in there, and then the oil cooler itself. I just replace them, right? I've talked to Harley Davidson about that, and they don't always specify it. I always fight for that. You just can't get in there and clean that enough. My problem is verifying that it's clean. If I can open up the oil pan and clean it with solvent and blow it out and clean it again and verify that there's nothing in there, I'm good. But if there's a cover on top of it, you just can't. You don't know if you've got little shrapnel or big shrapnel in there, and you know, at a cost of, I don't know, $100, pretty soon you're spending enough work that you might as well just scrap that and start with a new one that's verified clean. And I wouldn't even try to do that with an oil cooler. There's so many little areas for a little piece to catch, and that little piece comes out and finds its way. You know, it could go through a lot of things and be fine, but let's say it catches in the, you know, at the roller for the tappet, in between the tappet and the cam. It's going to cause damage to that very quickly. If it goes to the oil pump, you know, it's just going to cause some additional damage, but it could cause catastrophic failure in a lifter pretty quick. So why take that chance?
Yeah, we find a lot of power steering coolers. We have to put racks on cars and so on. And
I don't have to deal with that.
That's right. You don't have power steering. But you know, some people balk at it. You know, the average cooler is $80 or $90, and you know, some of these companies, there's no warranty on the new part unless you replace it. So you know, we recommend in most cases.
I mean, the warranty is important, but also your time is worth something. I mean, it's a hassle to have to come back and do something. And you know, if the shop is, you know, if I'm going to stand behind our work, I gotta say I need to know that things are good. If you say, well, I'm going to take the chance and not replace the oil cooler, I mean, I'll try to talk you out of that decision. Ultimately, it's the consumer's decision. But you know, for $100, if you have a breakdown, it ruins your vacation, or you're stuck on the side of the road, it causes some danger. I mean, and then the hassle of bringing it back and getting it repaired. I mean, it's just that's a bad gamble.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we are running close on time. All American Harley Davidson.
All American Harley Davidson in Southern Maryland. 301-274-5000, or stop by and see us at 8126 Old Leonardtown Road, down Route 5, south of Waldorf. Come visit us at International Motorcycle Show in a couple of weeks, February 23rd, 24th, 25th, and check our events calendar online for some upcoming seminars and other things that we got going on.
allamericanharley.com.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Lyndon, I want to thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
All right. Hey, folks, thanks for listening. And thanks to Steve McMillan and George Stockton for producing today's show. For everyone here at Goss's Garage, including Lyndon Abel, I'm Pat Goss. Until next time, please, everybody, drive gently. We'll see ya.